Hey everybody, and welcome to the Collab 365 live show. I'm your normally co-host Nick Bertoli, but today I'm here without Andy. He is over in the Netherlands doing some crazy things over at the Engage conference that some of you guys won those tickets to. So hopefully those of you who are there are enjoying it as well. Today we are going to be talking about intranets in a box and whether or not you want to use one of those or just build your own intranet from scratch. Of course, the answer is probably going to depend on your organization, what you want to achieve. But I've got three guests here to talk about their opinions on the subject. So let's welcome them in no particular order. Let's start with Paul Gallagher. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Very good, thank you. Good to be here.
Good. If you could, please give a quick introduction to yourself.
Okay, so my name is Paul Gallagher. I work for an ISV called AxiaWorks. I'm based in the UK. I'm currently at home in York, and I've kind of been involved in SharePoint since the original version of SharePoint. From an internet point of view, I've been involved in kind of sort of 2 or 3 kind of quite large 100,000 people plus internet projects, I guess, and then a few other smaller kind of involvements with intranets. I guess I haven't really had a great deal of experience with the kind of off the shelf, so I'm kind of quite interested to to kind of get some people's views on kind of taking a ready kind of built package and then building on top of that.
Awesome, thank you. Sam, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi there, everybody. So my name's Sam Marshall. I'm the owner of Clearbox Consulting, also based in the UK. I've worked in the intranet and digital workplace field for about 18 years now. I guess I've worked on touching 100 intranet implementations now, mostly as a strategy consultant. So we don't do technical stuff, but we do often align with internal communications and the business goals. I guess the reason I'm invited today is that for the last 18 months, Clearbox has been producing an independent review of this market space and looking at the tools that are available. And most recently, we reviewed 26 of those. We're just gearing up to do the next version, where I guess there's going to be about 40 or so that will be included.
Awesome, thank you. I'm very excited to see what results you find there. And last but not least, Collab 365 community regular, Matt Bailey. How's it going?
Hello there. Hi, my name is Matthew J. Bailey. I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and independent consultant. I've been working with SharePoint for about 10 years, and I recently was working with a very large corporation as a consultant, evaluating different internet in a box products, and there were a lot of lessons learned the hard way, but that I'd like to share with other people today so that hopefully they don't have to endure the same pain themselves.
Awesome, thank you. So with all that being said, Paul, you like you, I don't have a whole lot of experience with internet out of the box as well. I've always just built mine from the ground up. Not everyone gets that luxury though. So for everyone who doesn't know exactly what intranets in a box are, Sam, could you shine some light on that subject, please?
Yeah, so we use that phrase as a catch-all, but I guess there's a range from something you might say is basically a set of code libraries that the agencies have bundled together and put a brand against, right through to something where you can install it in an hour or less than a day and then be ready to run, similar to some of the more dedicated internet products like Thought Farmer or Jive that only do one thing. So within that range, what you're looking at often is agencies that have been building the same things for clients again and again. For example, a news carousel fits on the feature requirements list of just about every internet I've seen. So they're taking those requirements and standardizing them, saying, well, let's build it once and then we can look after the maintaining of it. You don't need to worry if Microsoft changed something because we'll do it for all our clients. And that way the risk and the cost is shared.
That's awesome. So to me, that sounds like, why wouldn't just everyone get that, right? You just go ahead and buy one of those off the shelf and you have every web part you ever need. All you have to do is plug your content in, right? You're just good to go at that point.
You could work for the sales team with a line like that, yes.
yeah, exactly. It raises your kids for you and everything. It's great. So, of course, that's not true. We know there's limits to them. They do have great features. You can roll them out really fast. So before we start talking about why you would want one of those. We'll come back to that, and it's really kind of apparent up front. But let's start talking about maybe why you maybe want to roll your own. Why don't we start with you, Matt?
As far as building one from scratch on your own, you mean?
Yep, exactly. Why would you want to build one from scratch instead?
So I'd say functionality mostly. Most of these products, in my opinion, that are out on the marketplace are pretty much they're just for very basic, simple needs, And if you're looking to do anything that's beyond that, if you're looking to make these products a base that you're going to build upon versus just use what they give you and be happy with that, I think that's a bad idea. So meaning it would be a good idea to do custom development if you're looking for anything more than something basic, or to be at the mercy of the vendor who is going to be in control of what you can or can't do.
Okay, and I can see that being some organizations may care more about that than others. And you also, like you said, the customization is a huge benefit to developing your own. It's your own. It's built exactly to your specifications. I think there can be some problems with that as well. What do you think, Paul?
Sorry, problems with specific customizations?
Well, yeah, both pros and cons to kind of building your own intranet from scratch. We're going to kind of talk about that one first.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess you kind of need to know exactly what features you want, because you can, very easily burn through a kind of lot of resources and dev time trying to kind of, sort of work that out. If you've kind of ramped up a team, and you kind of, it's good if possible to have, some of these things defined up front, really. And I guess some of that comes down to, who are your kind of major stakeholders, because, depending on what specific stakeholders are involved in the business, whether it's HR, is it a comms and marketing driven intranet, is it IT that's kind of driving this, is it a combination of them all? And I guess, that will kind of have a bearing on the kind of types of, the types of requirements and integrations that you might want to kind of build. Versus, out of the box. I guess the kind of out of the box option is going to kind of give you a starting point of sometimes kind of, giving some organizations the ideas of the kind of things that they're after. They've not always kind of got that kind of closely defined, I guess.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I've gone to a lot of organizations who are like, we have SharePoint. All right, what are we going to do with it now? Well, let's just give it everything. Let's turn everything on. And like you said, Matt, the intranet's in a box. They give you common things, and Sam, you mentioned it as well. They give you common things that a lot of companies ask for. They probably want an employee directory, which is easy enough to build in SharePoint, but not everyone knows that, and maybe they don't know that they want it until down the road longer. A lot of those intranets in a box can get you 80% of the way just right then. Whereas if you're trying to build one from scratch, maybe you don't have the knowledge on staff. Maybe you don't have the manpower at all. Maybe you just don't have the warm bodies. And I think sometimes you can benefit from going to a company that makes intranets in a box. What are your thoughts on rolling your own intranet, Sam?
I think there's definitely a case for it, particularly for larger organizations. Some of these in-a-box products are licensed per seat. And when you get up to 50,000 employees, you're looking at an awful lot of money up front, plus a maintenance cost to keep using the product. There are times when, if you've got that much funding available, you probably could, over 3 or 5 years, save money by building your own and only building the things that you want, rather than perhaps buying in a box product where you're paying for loads of features that you might never use. And on top of that, some of my clients are worried about that stack of support. So say in your new intranet, there's a bug, something's not quite working. Your steps to resolution come from, is it something you've done in the content? Is it the vendor of the in-a-box product that's got to solve it? Are they going to blame Microsoft for doing it wrong, or the host, the cloud host? So you've got a lot of bucks that can get passed around to sort things out when you go down that route.
Oh, absolutely. I worked for a company that they didn't make quite intranet in a box, but it was something similar to that. And yeah, if something went wrong, that's exactly the chain that it had to go through. And me being the person who implements it, do I talk to my in-house developers or go to Microsoft or both? And then both my company my company ended up eating that cost rather than the people who were getting the intranet built, which is kind of one of those benefits of having someone else do it rather than doing it yourself.
Yeah. It's also, it's not a mature market, and if you're buying someone else's code and then they decide to walk away from that product because it's not profitable for them, you can be left a bit high and dry. Whereas if it's your own code, you can always find someone else to carry on developing it for you.
I get the feeling, and I don't know if this is sort of correct or not. Sam, perhaps you can help me out here, but there seems to be, or I'm noticing a lot of kind of particularly SharePoint-based intranets in a box. There seems to be a kind of explosion over the last kind of year or two of these kind of products. Would you agree? Or
so at the start of 2016, when we set out to review them, we found about 10 products and we reviewed 6 of them. November 2016, we reviewed 26 of them. Now the list of people that want to be in the report is over 40, and I reckon if we really looked around, we'd probably push about 60 of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess as a sort of market forces type of thing, some of these will fall by the wayside. So how do you kind of make sure you kind of pick a vendor that is actually going to be around in 2 or 3 years' time or 5 years' time to support your intranet?
That's a good point. Go ahead, Sam.
I guess, I always say to the companies I'm working with, make sure your department for procurement does due diligence on the vendor as it would with any other software provider. These are generally not big companies, so ask the questions about how long has the product been around, what's your financial backing for the company, how big is the company that's producing this piece of software. Because to be honest, sometimes we get asked to review a product and they can't even send us to a website because it's that new and that immature. So yeah, you need to tread carefully in this space for sure.
Yeah, of course that can happen on the roll your own side as well. I've gone into a lot of companies where they had a SharePoint guy who built half an intranet, or even worse, a bunch, like 1,000 little pieces of intranet everywhere. They've gone through 4 SharePoint guys. And it's just a mess.
Disappeared with the source code.
Yeah, on a floppy disk.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, you want to change navigation? Well, guess what? We don't know how to do that because the guy that built it, he may not be dead, but we don't know where he is. So you can run into that. At least with a company, if you find one that is going to be around for a while. Even when they have turnover, you're not going to run into the same kind of problems. They're going to get the same training probably that person before them got.
Yeah.
Whereas that may not work at all for you.
I mean, you guys that work more on the development roll your own side. I mean, I guess it's not uncommon for a large company to get an agency in to build an intranet according to their spec, and it would have a lifespan of maybe 3-4 years. So what do you see as the risk in that? Because if your supplier leaves the SharePoint market and you have a problem with what they created for you 2 years ago, is it hard to get that fixed?
Yeah, it is. That's actually the space that I live in, because that happens.
I wasn't pointing fingers.
I like to come in behind and swoop in on that. But no, you're right. It is hard to get fixed, and especially if it was something that was built in a legacy system. Like, what if it was built on top of SharePoint 2010 and they want all the same features that they had before? That's a huge hassle. They may as well just buy a new one at that point because it's probably going to cost the same, maybe more. So yeah, there's definitely some problems with rolling your own. But of course, there's pros to it. You own all of it. It does what you want it to do if you have the skills to do so.
And I guess that kind of model sort of works maybe better for the larger organizations where they've perhaps got their own, in-house dev team, and they've got like a BAU support team that kind of continues to to keep the wheels turning and do kind of small changes as the business requirements, changes to various parts of the intranet come along. I guess that probably, that sort of works better with a larger organization, I guess, in my, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for the most part, larger organizations are going to have more resources to do any of these options. So I think either way, it's probably going to, they can do what they want, essentially. Now, one thing that we keep mentioning that these intranets, and I mentioned legacy systems, but Office 365 has all kinds of new stuff that is starting to maybe cut into some of this space. They're starting to put out some of these web parts that do that, and they've got the new communication sites coming out that does a lot of stuff that some of these intranets in a box do. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think it's just going to kill that whole market, or the internet guys going to need to adapt? What do you think?
I think it's kind of it's a particularly sort of broad solution, isn't it? I mean, I think some of the kind of organizations that that I've kind of done large projects for, I don't think that currently, as it stands now, that those solutions are necessarily on their own going to cut it for those organizations. I think it's kind of too general and generic. So I think that they're always going to have to, particularly the kind of organizations I've dealt with, they would have to do their own integrations, and they would have to do their own customizations on top of that. I mean, what's there currently? But I think maybe for smaller, possibly smaller organizations, it's certainly kind of quite an interesting proposition.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of my clients are also the small companies, and they don't need any of that design. They use out-of-the-box web parts, maybe some custom workflows or flows or Power Apps, whatever. But they don't do heavy branding beyond a logo and a color scheme. They don't need responsive design or anything like that. So that's probably fine for out-of-the-box. But a lot of these intranet in a box have all of these really shiny bells and whistles that you really don't get out of Office 365. Matt, what are your thoughts on the new features coming out in Office 365?
Well, yeah. So obviously they're coming out every single day, and there's a ton of them. I think what your point that you had just made about these internet in a box products are probably being targeted at larger corporations where having a brand on their intranet is something that's very important. I think that's a very true statement. I am curious to see how these companies are going to be able to keep up with the nonstop change that Office 365 keeps pushing to everyone, and how it must be constantly affecting their product, and how are they going to keep their product up to date so that it's always working with something that Microsoft has just changed. And that goes back to a couple comments that were made earlier regarding, how long has this company been in business? What kind of reputation do they have? What kind of, a couple things I'd written in a blog post recently regarding a service agreement that, you're going to get from this company. What's considered a bug? What isn't? How quickly are they going to fix it? Things like that.
Awesome. That's very helpful. We've actually got some questions coming in that are related to what we're talking about. And this one sounds good. That's one person mentioned that, SharePoint isn't really just an intranet anymore. It kind of never really was. It used to be that there was just 1,000 things you could do. It was just like a front end for a database. But it's evolved over the years. Now SharePoint has its own thing, but there's also the whole Office 365 world. So there's a lot more to it that intranets have to contend with, I think. So the question is, why would you put yourself in that box? Does using an intranet in a box stop you from using all of those other things?
It can do, but not if you pick the right one. I mean, to build on Matt's point, the important thing is that when you deploy the intranet in a box, you don't lock yourself out of accessing all the other good stuff that's coming from Microsoft. So, like Stream has just gone in mainstream. So a lot of my clients would want to be able to use that as soon as it's available, rather than waiting for the vendor to somehow integrate that into their product.
Right. So I guess yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So that's part of your selection criteria. But to the point about why would you, I think most of what Microsoft offers is broad and shallow in Office 365. So it kind of superficially ticks the boxes for publishing and for collaboration. But most organizations over a few thousand employees, up to hundreds of thousands of employees, they need to tailor SharePoint to fulfill some quite specific organizational needs. The intranets in a box are taking that step closer to fulfilling those specific needs, which I think is one reason that justifies the diversity of what we see from this product range. Most of the vendors would say that they're very different from their competition. I would say some of them are generally very different, but a lot of the ones that were just aiming at smaller companies to get their branding right are probably the ones that will struggle most now that we've got better looking communication sites, for example.
Right. Yeah, and I've seen some specialized intranets in a box as well that are made more like specifically for HR, specifically for healthcare, and stuff like that. And Office 365 isn't going to have anything like that.
No.
No.
Well, never say never, but unlikely.
Yeah, not currently. They don't. I know Microsoft does healthcare stuff, but SharePoint is used in healthcare a lot. In fact, that's where I started. But again, I worked for the company that made those because they're just not there out of the box. Okay, so now we've talked about kind of awesome reasons to get these and how it really doesn't encroach in the territory of just using out of the box stuff. You're still welcome to use that. What kind of things do you need to consider when you're looking at what intranets you want to pick? Let's start with you, Matt. You said you did this for a client not too long ago.
Yeah, so there was a very, very large, well-known corporation that was looking at pre-built intranets just because they had so many different consulting agencies and consultants coming in and developing all these different things in SharePoint, and they were looking to at least supplement it with a pre-built product for more simple or basic website requests. But it was, the evaluation process ended up taking months. In the end, they didn't purchase any of them, and I noticed like a lot of questions were not asked in the very beginning, such as, exactly what are you expecting from this product? How much exactly does it cost? Because that was the number one reason why they walked away from it. Another company we looked at went out of business, or was broken into pieces and sold off, and then like parts were acquired by another company. That's another question of like long-term reputability of the company in the first place. These are the kinds of questions, like if people would think about this and put the time in advance of how much they're going to, if they'd put more time up front at writing down the questions that they have and what they're trying to get out of this, I think they'd have a better end result versus just thinking it's a magical solution to one of their problems.
I've run into that issue with SharePoint, Office 365. Anytime I've ever gone in anywhere, they always think, oh, well, this is magical, and it really never is to their expectations. So one of the things is, managing those expectations. So let's start talking about what some of those questions are that you might want to ask people. Paul, do you have any ideas? Since you like me are new to intranets in box, what questions would you ask about them?
I guess as you say, you've got to have your requirements defined up front. So, is it news? You're kind of interested in news publishing and targeting information to specific groups of users, for example. Is it more kind of collaboration focused? So, depending on the kind of sort of requirements of what those specific intranets in the boxes are. I guess obviously the due diligence around the company that you're looking at. Is it something I can customize? Because I might want to kind of have some sort of an accelerator where I can get to sort of 50-60%, but actually I want to be able to have my own little dev team do some customizations on the platform. So is it something that I can kind of use as a kind of an accelerator to get me off the blocks as it were? Because actually some of the features that I've seen are quite nice. So I guess that would kind of probably be important to some customers. I guess cost is obviously a big one. What's the ongoing cost? What's the upfront cost? What, depending on the budget for the particular organization, obviously that's another important factor. As Sam mentioned, is it going to integrate with, as all this kind of new stuff just keeps coming in all the time from SharePoint and Office 365, am I going to be able to utilize that in the future? So I guess there's some of the questions, I guess.
Yeah, those are a good start. And can I customize it is a good one.
Yeah.
I know, Matt, since you just put out an article not too long ago, maybe even today, about different questions you would ask for those. Do you have an example of a couple of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one thing just to add on to what Paul had mentioned there a moment ago, um, as far as cost, one other, what might be considered a hidden cost would be regarding training, because one of the vendors that we evaluated had this kind of a mandatory launch project fee that lasted for a couple of weeks. And it wasn't, I don't think anybody had expected that. It was kind of like, okay, we finally got all this, how much it's going to cost down. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's like, oh no, there's this additional fee to manage it and implement it kind of thing coming out of nowhere. And if there's no training, or if the training that comes with it's very low quality, there's that hidden cost of how many hours are you going to spend training your users on the product so that they understand how to use it. A few other questions I mentioned in my article: support, is it really clearly defined what is a bug that they're going to fix and what isn't a bug that they're going to blame Microsoft for, and what is the turnaround time for that? I'd say another huge thing, maybe not a question but a request, is the most of the learning that I got from the whole evaluation process came at the very end, when we actually asked them to deploy a sample of their product in the environment at the company, so that we could actually, like touch it and play around with it. Because we found a lot of misunderstanding features that we thought would be there because SharePoint had that feature, such as language translation, which is built in. But then we realized this product didn't work at all with it, and everything just came up with error pages. So, like I said, the last thing's not necessarily a question, but I would say of everything I have to recommend, the number one thing I just insist upon is allowing for a demo in your own environment of
Some
the
sort
product
of
before you
an
actually
actual
purchase it.
hands-on.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Sam, what are your thoughts? What other kinds of things should you be considering when you're looking into these?
So Matt and Paul, I think, have made some good points about what you might consider the non-functional requirements, but to me the main differentiators are actually on the functional side. So in our evaluation, we gave the vendors 8 different scenarios and said, can you demonstrate to us exactly how your product would solve these scenarios? So one of the main ones is around news publishing, because that to me is where SharePoint and Office 365 is particularly shallow. When you talk to most internal communicators, you want a whole lot more power and control over news publishing and federated news, for example. So we asked the products to demonstrate what support you would get as a communicator for things like scheduling news stories or tagging them with metadata so they can be pushed out to different audiences. Another area in terms of functionality that differentiates them is around the social side. So not everybody's very happy with Yammer as the answer to all your social needs, and increasing with 3. Yeah, who knew, eh? Yeah. And actually finding groups and teams and everything on top doesn't even meet all the nuanced requirements. So some of these products have gone big time to make them almost like a rival to something like Jive, in that they completely replace the social layer with their own functionality. But other products say, well, we don't go there. We advise Yammer, and we've done some fairly lightweight integration. So it's things like that I think will allow you to very rapidly go from 50 or so options down to a dozen. And then you'll be able to exclude things because of the non-functional requirements. And given the scale of a lot of these companies, I think geography comes into play. And I'm not sure we mentioned that. So just having a company that is available during your to give support hours within Europe if you're Europe-based, or North America if you're North America-based, can go a long way towards smoothing the relationship out. There's some hidden gotchas as well in terms of the hosting. So you might think if you're on SharePoint Online, then everything's hosted through Microsoft and you can get agreements about where that data lives. But often these products are actually applications that are hosted on Azure or other services, which might be based only in one country.
And that can cause some issues if you have regulations to deal with.
Yeah, if you're Swiss, then it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a few questions. We've actually got plenty of time left. So one of the questions was, so if we do want to, let's say, roll our own versus buying an intranet, where would I even get started? There's a huge undertaking. I mean, what could organizations even do to get the ball rolling, rolling an intranet from scratch? Paul, you got experience with this.
Tightly, I guess, kind of understand what the business, problems they're trying to solve are, tightly kind of defining the requirements. So whether that's involved in getting, a consultancy involved or a business analyst, and just kind of, really tying down, what are the problems, what are the, what kind of intranet is it? Is it kind of a comms focused thing? Is it more collaboration based? Are there specific, HR tools that and kind of getting that nailed down up front so that you've kind of got a scope to go and make the decision, sort of build versus buy. I guess, one of the, I've seen projects where, they've burnt a hell of a lot of money just trying to work out what it is that they want on their intranet. And instead of kind of having this defined before they start engaging teams and technologies and all the rest of it. That you can kind of burn through budget quite quickly if you've not got that defined up front. Getting that defined, and then kind of looking for the best fit build versus buy. I would have thought up front would be the first stage, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen organizations do exactly what you're talking about. They just go out and they buy something. They don't really know what they want. That's Office 365 or SharePoint or Intranet in a box or really any technology ever. I've seen companies that have several competing technologies used for the same thing that like two people use.
And I guess kind of getting this, the right sponsors and kind of, from within the business so that the right kind of intranet is kind of being looked at, and the right people are involved, the right stakeholders are involved from the very beginning, so that if you are kind of building something internally, you've got the if there's infrastructure you need to put in place, if it's kind of a large organization, to make sure that you can pull, because it's not just the cost of developing something. You've got a large organization actually kind of putting that out there in an organization, getting sign off across, or kind of getting the business right across a large organization to kind of sign up to everything and kind of get on board. Is that again can be another way where you can start kind of really burning through budget. So again, if that's something you kind of deciding between cloud versus an on-prem implementation, for example, that's something else to kind of take into account is the particularly on the kind of a larger project, I guess.
Yeah, for sure, that's where you want to start up front. And you mentioned getting all the right people together. This could be an issue. This could be kind of a deciding factor in whether you buy or build. You might not have the right people. There might not be the right people in your city or state, depending on where you live. And you might be better off building buying one. You're not gonna, even if you have a SharePoint guy that you found in your city, what if they leave? Because what if they get picked up from some other city that doesn't have a SharePoint guy, and then they move away, and then your city doesn't have a SharePoint guy anymore? So that is a very real problem that I've seen places run into. Okay, so let me see. I have another pile of questions. Let me kind of read through them real quick. Sorry, guys. Okay, you kind of you touched on this already, Sam. But when you actually decide, hey, I want to buy an intranet in a box, how exactly do you get that ball rolling? I personally, I would just do a quick search. I'd get on my search engine of choice and do a quick search and go from there. But not everyone understands exactly what they're looking for. Where would you start?
So look, we get asked to help companies a lot, even though they've seen our report and it kind of lays out the options. What we end up talking to them about is actually the digital workplace strategy as a whole. Because as one of the commenters said, SharePoint goes way beyond intranets, and Office 365 certainly does. But there's a whole world to consider which isn't the Microsoft world too. So unless you're clear about what are the elements of your digital workplace that the product will solve, you'll end up leaving gaps or duplicating or missing out the bigger picture, for example, about integration with SAP or PeopleSoft or Workday or all the other things that people would expect to see as something that they can get to readily when they log in. And probably the thing that makes it a really big challenge for intranets is that it's like all the other pieces of the jigsaw are going to be in place. So HR, finance, they will be wedded to their systems and say, look, these are a given, you've got to work around us. So the intranet becomes the last piece in the jigsaw that has to be a precise shape to fit. Otherwise, you're going to have gaps.
Yeah, or all your other pieces break.
That's why stepping back and saying, let's also consider some role type needs. So I'm a project manager. I want to tell my organization about this new project. It's going to go on for 2 years. Lots of people will be impacted. We think we know who the stakeholders are, but we've also got to inform other people who might be in other departments that don't know about us so that they know about our project. How do I go about that? Because it seems to me at the moment, Mr. Organization, you're offering me email. I've got groups. I could put it on the internet. I could have a Yammer site. I could put around a video. Do you want me to start blogging about it? There's too many options for your average business user to want to contemplate. So getting some simplification around what you intend to use when, as in how you intend to solve problems like that, makes it a lot easier to say, so what are the key features that we're looking for in a product that are going to be make or break, and what else looks good when the sales guy comes in that actually we shouldn't get too attached to because we don't see a business need for that.
Are you suggesting that people should figure out the requirements and maybe even document them before they do all of this? Because that just sounds like new age mumbo jumbo.
I probably used 20 times as many words to say that. Yes, thank you. Exactly that. It's all, it's all good project hygiene, isn't it? About we know so well, don't be driven by the technology, get the requirements, get the stakeholders and the change management piece on side, and nothing about buying one of these in-a-box products changes all that requirement.
Yep. I know it's crazy. Whenever we get Ducks on the show, he comes with like 20 spreadsheets, and they're all full of things in giant documents. It's like, what? I've never seen documents during a project. What is this? But it turns out that those are a good idea, and you should do them before making any decision, honestly, and after and during and at all times. That's one of the main things that you can do with your intranet. Store your documents about everything on it.
But I think we've maybe focused on the downside of the intranets in a box quite a lot, and to me, the massive appeal of these, and the reason people are so excited about them is that most companies are saying, well, can we buy, not build wherever possible? Because we've really been burned with these legacy systems, which are really painful to keep ownership of. So by buying an intranet in a box, you can accelerate very quickly towards having a product installed, so you can focus on the things that are really hard, which isn't the technology, but is about how the organization is going to use these, getting the right content in there, getting people collaborating on it as a community, actually sharing knowledge, thinking about the change management. It de-risks all that 18 months that we used to see between pinning down the requirements and actually being able to launch something, and compresses that to a much shorter time frame to give you the headspace and the organizational space to do everything that comes after the technical go live and gets into the actual lifespan of your intranet.
Awesome. All right, we have a few more minutes. We're actually going to have to cut kind of short today. I have a meeting going in soon. So yeah, I know, right?
We'll carry on.
I know, never.
We're on your time.
Let's talk a little bit more about why they're so cool. For one reason, I've built a lot of intranets in my day, kind of on both sides of the things, but an out-of-the-box intranet just looks so much better than anything I can make. There's not even a question about it.
And I guess that this kind of there's so many features as well that time and time again must kind of get rebuilt, right? I mean, kind of like you say, news carousels or a weather web part. I mean, I don't know why you'd want one, but I mean, weather web part or something, right? And or a world clock or something,
Stock price checker.
yeah. Stock price. That's I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because there are a whole bunch of things that you know that many businesses kind of must always ask for when it comes to defining these requirements.
I agree. Let's talk about a couple of those kind of before we wrap this up, because you know, like you said, like Sam said, we kind of sound like we're negative towards these, but not really. There's a lot you can do with these that you really can't do with out of the box, and that would be a huge pain to build yourself. Sam, what's kind of one of the common ones that you see regularly?
So in the last wave of reviews we did, a lot of the vendors were trying to make the mobile experience a lot better by having everything fully responsive. A few of them even have dedicated apps that will pull your news through into the mobile. I guess with the developments we've seen on Office 365, that's becoming less critical. But don't forget, an awful lot of companies are still on SharePoint 2013 or on 2016 on-prem, and they're not necessarily getting all this. Even things that work with SharePoint, you don't always get with SharePoint 2016 on-prem. But some of the best products, to me, are filling that social collaboration gap. So simple things like when I publish a news story and someone comments on that, can I see that in the activity feed, in Yammer or in the social feed? If I do something to a document within a community, is that visible outside the community? Because we see an awful lot of fragmentation in Office 365, and the good products are pulling this back together again and making it something much closer to what would make sense to an employee who's used to the consumer world rather than the Microsoft world.
Okay, Matt, when you were doing your evaluations, what kind of features were you looking for?
So I'm trying to think. So basically, the initial project was for an IT support site, which in general didn't have that much functionality that they needed. It was more just informational, like this person is your Skype for business help, and here are some quick tips and that kind of thing. So I guess in my situation, it was just informational. It wasn't too much going on except for the fact that it needed to be translated into foreign languages. And other than basic information publishing, it's the kind of thing you want to spend time researching if the product can do that or not.
Awesome, cool. So I think we're pretty much going to wrap it up. We don't have a whole lot more questions coming in. So Sam, your report, how would people find this? I know I found it earlier on the internet. Are you going to share a link to it one day?
Yes, I'll happily post the link. There it is if you want to reach into the screen and grab it. So it's at clearbox, clearbox.co.uk. You'll see it on the homepage. And I guess we could even put a discount code for the people who attended this as well to give them a 10% off the price. I'll post that as well.
Awesome. That'd be much appreciated. So yeah, I think we're not out of time, but again, unfortunately, I have work things to do. Thank you guys for joining. This was a fun session. Later on, again, because some of these, they're coming out with new stuff all the time. Thanks everybody for watching. Andy will be back next time, unfortunately. And we are also going to do a special GDPR episode of the live show on the 28th of July. So it's actually going to be like 1 or 2 days after a regular live show. So look forward to that. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you later. Have a good one.
Bye now. Thanks.